What if I told you that Antarctica, the coldest and most desolate place on Earth, is hiding more than just ice? Beneath the frozen surface lie eerie tales of haunted explorers, ghost ships that vanish into thin air, and voices that whisper from the dark. People have disappeared here without a trace, and those who return speak of shadows that don't belong to the living. Listen closely, but beware. This is not just a story of the unknown. It's an invitation to step into the world's most terrifying secrets, buried deep in the ice. And once you're in, there's no turning back. Chapter 1: The Desolate Continent, a history of fear and mystery. Antarctica, the coldest, driest and most remote continent on Earth, has always been shrouded in mystery and intrigue. For centuries, its unyielding ice and harsh conditions have both repelled and attracted explorers seeking to conquer the last frontier of the planet. While much of the interest in Antarctica stems from its extreme environment and the scientific secrets hidden beneath its ice, a darker narrative threads through its history. The psychological terror, strange phenomena and unexplained events that have plagued those who dared to explore this desolate landscape. This chapter delves into the experiences of early Antarctic explorers, revealing the chilling encounters that sparked fears of the supernatural on the frozen continent. The heroic age of Antarctic exploration, spanning from 1897 to 1922, marks the beginning of humanity's persistent attempts to unlock the secrets of Antarctica. During this period, notable figures such as Ernest Shackleton, Robert Falcon Scott and Roald Amundsen led daring expeditions into the heart of the continent, facing the elements with minimal technology and supplies. These expeditions were defined by bravery, resilience and tragic loss, but they were also marked by bizarre, unexplainable events that suggested a presence beyond the physical. One of the most famous and haunting stories from this era comes from Sir Ernest Shackleton's Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition, 1914–1917. Shackleton and his crew set sail on the Endurance, aiming to cross Antarctica from coast to coast. However, their journey quickly turned into a battle for survival when the Endurance became trapped in pack ice in the Weddell Sea. For months the crew waited in vain for the ice to release their ship. During this time, isolated in the harshest environment on Earth, some crew members began reporting strange occurrences. According to Shackleton's account in his book, South, crew members often felt an uncanny sense of being watched, even when they were alone on the ice. At night they heard whispers carried by the wind, voices that seemed to speak in languages they did not understand. These experiences were often dismissed as the product of extreme stress and the eerie acoustics of the Antarctic wilderness, but they left a lasting impression on the men who lived through them. Another chilling account comes from the ill-fated Terra Nova expedition, led by Robert Falcon Scott from 1910 to 1913. Scott's team aimed to be the first to reach the South Pole, but their mission ended in tragedy when they were beaten by Amundsen's Norwegian team and faced a harrowing return journey in worsening conditions. During the expedition, as they journeyed deeper into the Antarctic interior, Scott and his men reported feeling an inexplicable presence accompanying them. The feeling was so strong that some members swore they saw shadows moving alongside their own, always just out of sight. In one eerie entry from his diary, Scott wrote about the weird and uncanny sense of a third man accompanying them on their treacherous journey back. This sensation, later dubbed the third man factor, became a well-documented phenomenon experienced by explorers and mountaineers in extreme environments, yet its origins remain elusive. The psychological strain of these early expeditions cannot be understated. Antarctica's relentless isolation, the monotony of endless white landscapes, and the perpetual threat of death created an atmosphere ripe for fear and paranoia. The men faced not only physical dangers, but also the terror of the unknown. The continent's vast emptiness, described as a great white silence, seemed to amplify every sound and shadow, turning natural phenomena into potentially supernatural experiences. The explorers often rationalized their encounters as hallucinations brought on by exhaustion, hunger, or the intense cold, but the stories persisted. Perhaps the most unsettling phenomenon reported by these early explorers was the strange auditory experiences. The sounds of Antarctica are peculiar. The continent is silent, save for the groaning of ice, the howling of wind, and occasionally the calls of seabirds. Yet there were frequent reports of voices carried on the wind, whispers emerging from nowhere, and even distant music that seemed to come from beneath the ice itself. During the Belgian Antarctic expedition, 1897–1899, which was the first to overwinter in the Antarctic, the crew faced extreme isolation and dwindling rations. As the long Antarctic night stretched on, some crew members reported hearing singing, voices, and other unidentifiable noises that couldn't be traced to any source. The captain, Adrian de Gerlache, and his crew experienced symptoms of what is now known as polar madness, but many of them remained convinced that they had heard something real, something not of this world. These accounts are not isolated incidents, but part of a larger pattern that continued into later expeditions and scientific ventures into the continent. The vast ice fields of Antarctica seem to evoke a primal fear that goes beyond the natural, touching on something deeply unsettling in the human psyche. Explorers and scientists have often described a feeling of an unseen presence, as if the ice itself were alive and watching. Even modern researchers have reported feelings of being watched or followed, sudden chills in otherwise warm research stations, and objects moving inexplicably in the windless cold. These experiences bring up a provocative question. Is Antarctica merely a desolate landscape of ice and rock, or is there something more to the stories that have been passed down through the generations? Some researchers suggest that the reports of hauntings and strange encounters can be attributed to infrasound, a type of low-frequency sound that can cause feelings of dread, hallucinations, and other psychological effects. The Antarctic winds and shifting ice could produce such sounds, leading to a natural explanation for the uncanny experiences of those on the continent. However, this scientific explanation does little to dispel the deep-seated fear that lingers in the minds of those who have lived through these encounters. As we move forward into this book, we will explore more specific instances of these strange and terrifying phenomena, all documented by the men and women who have ventured to the world's most isolated and inhospitable continent. The stories are real, and they serve as a reminder that Antarctica, in all its stark beauty, holds secrets that may never be fully understood. Whether driven by the psychological impact of extreme isolation or by forces beyond our comprehension, the ghosts of the ice continue to haunt the memories of those who have dared to explore its frozen expanses. Chapter 2: The Ghosts of Whalers Bay, Haunted Histories of Deception Island. Nestled within the icy embrace of the South Shetland Islands, Deception Island is one of the most intriguing and unsettling locations in Antarctica. Its unique horseshoe shape, created by the collapse of a volcanic caldera, provides a natural harbor known as Whalers Bay, which has been used by sealers, whalers, and explorers for over 2 centuries. While the island's dramatic history of volcanic eruptions, abandoned whaling stations, and scientific expeditions is well documented, there is another, darker side to Deception Island, one filled with stories of eerie encounters, ghostly apparitions, and unexplained phenomena that have left an indelible mark on those who have set foot on its shores. Deception Island's reputation as a haunted place began during the early 20th century, when it served as a hub for the whaling industry. Whalers Bay was the site of a bustling whaling station operated by Norwegian whalers, who used it as a base to process whale carcasses harvested from the surrounding waters. The station, with its boiling vats and blubber-strewn beaches, was a grim and desolate place. The harsh environment, coupled with the brutality of the whaling industry, created an atmosphere of death and despair. It is within this bleak setting that some of the earliest reports of hauntings began to surface. Whalers who worked at the station often spoke of seeing shadowy figures walking along the beach at dusk, figures that would vanish when approached. These apparitions were described as wearing old, weathered clothing, unlike anything worn by contemporary whalers. The sightings were so frequent that they became a topic of discussion among the men, who speculated that the spirits of long-dead sailors and whalers haunted the island. One of the most chilling accounts comes from a Norwegian whaler named Lars Jorgensen, who in 1912 reported seeing a figure standing on the shore looking out to sea. When he called out to the figure, it turned towards him, revealing a gaunt face with hollow eyes. The figure then dissipated into the mist, leaving Jorgensen shaken and convinced he had seen a ghost. In addition to these ghostly sightings, Whalers Bay was known for its unsettling sounds. Visitors and workers at the station often reported hearing disembodied voices, muffled conversations, and even the sounds of someone or something walking on the wooden floors of the abandoned buildings. These sounds were often heard late at night, when the bay was shrouded in darkness and silence. Some attributed these phenomena to the howling Antarctic winds, which could create eerie noises as they swept through the rusted structures. However, those who experienced the sounds firsthand were not so easily convinced. One particularly unnerving story involves a British naval officer who visited the island in the 1960s as part of a routine patrol. While exploring the decaying remnants of the whaling station, he heard what sounded like the faint strains of music coming from one of the dilapidated buildings. Curious, he followed the sound, only for it to abruptly stop as he reached the entrance. Inside, he found nothing but rusting equipment and a profound, unsettling silence. The experience left him deeply disturbed, and he later recounted that he felt as if he were being watched by unseen eyes. The island's reputation as a haunted location only grew with time, especially after it was abandoned following a series of volcanic eruptions in the late 1960s. The eruptions destroyed much of the remaining infrastructure on the island, leaving behind a landscape of twisted metal, collapsed buildings, and steaming volcanic ash, a setting that looked like it was pulled straight from a horror movie. Since then, Deception Island has become a ghostly relic of a bygone era, visited only occasionally by tourists, researchers, and adventurers. Despite its abandonment, reports of strange occurrences continue to emerge. In 1976, a team of geologists from the British Antarctic Survey arrived on Deception Island to study the island's volcanic activity. The group stayed in makeshift shelters near the ruins of the old whaling station. One night, as they were gathered around a campfire discussing their findings, they noticed a figure moving among the ruins. Initially, they assumed it was a member of their team, but when a head count revealed everyone was present, their mood quickly turned from curiosity to fear. The figure seemed to dart between the buildings, always remaining just out of clear view. When one of the geologists attempted to approach, it vanished into thin air. The team spent a sleepless night, disturbed by the encounter and by the unshakable feeling that they were not alone. Further reinforcing the island's eerie reputation, a more recent account from the early 2000s tells of a group of tourists who had come ashore to explore the abandoned whaling station. As the guide led them through the rusted vats and skeletal remains of buildings, one of the tourists, a woman in her 50s, wandered off slightly from the group. She later recounted that she had seen a man dressed in a tattered whaler's outfit, standing near one of the old boilers. He appeared solid and real, and she assumed he was part of a reenactment. However, as she approached, the figure seemed to disintegrate into the swirling mist. She returned to the group, visibly shaken, and when she told her story, she was met with a mixture of skepticism and concern. No one else had seen the figure, but several in the group reported feeling a sudden chill around the same time. Whalers Bay is also home to an old cemetery, where the graves of several whalers lie beneath weathered wooden crosses. It is said that the spirits of these men, who died far from home in one of the most inhospitable places on Earth, still linger. The cemetery itself has become a focal point for paranormal activity, with reports of ghostly figures standing among the graves, as well as inexplicable cold spots and sudden gusts of wind that seem to emanate from nowhere. Deception Island, and Whalers Bay in particular, seems to encapsulate the essence of Antarctica's haunted history. The island's violent geological activity, coupled with its history of suffering, death and abandonment, has created a fertile ground for ghost stories and unexplained phenomena. For those who have visited, the experience is often described as profoundly unsettling. An encounter not just with the remnants of human endeavor in one of the world's most remote places, but with the lingering spirits of those who came before. Whether one believes in the supernatural or not, The stories from Whalers Bay suggest that some places hold on to the energy of their past. The island remains a place where the boundaries between the living and the dead, the real and the imagined, seem to blur, a place where the cold, desolate landscape is haunted not only by the memories of those who once toiled there but perhaps by their restless spirits as well. Chapter 3: The South Pole Station Hauntings: Secrets Beneath the Ice. Deep in the heart of Antarctica lies the Amundsen Scott South Pole Station, a remote scientific outpost that has stood as a symbol of human endurance and exploration since it was first established in 1956. Located at the geographic South Pole, this station is one of the most isolated places on Earth, where the sun rises and sets only once a year, and temperatures can plunge to -100 degrees Fahrenheit, -73 degrees Celsius. For the scientists, engineers and support staff who live and work here, the extreme environment brings not only the challenge of conducting research in the coldest place on Earth, but also the psychological strain of living in near-total isolation. Over the decades, this isolation has given rise to numerous stories of strange occurrences, eerie sensations and ghostly encounters, leading many to believe that the South Pole is haunted by more than just the elements. The stories of hauntings at the Amundsen Scott South Pole Station are as varied as they are chilling. While the station itself is a hub of scientific research, particularly in the fields of astronomy, climatology and glaciology, it is also a place where the line between reality and imagination can blur. Many of the reports of paranormal activity come from the long, dark winter months, when the sun dips below the horizon for 6 months, plunging the station into a perpetual night. During this time, the station's inhabitants are cut off from the outside world, surrounded by an unending expanse of ice and darkness. It is within this context that some of the most unsettling stories have emerged. One of the most persistent legends at the South Pole Station involves the dark figure that is said to wander the corridors during the long winter nights. Described as a tall, shadowy silhouette, this figure has been reportedly seen by several people over the years, often in the peripheral vision of those who catch a fleeting glimpse of it before it vanishes. Some have described the figure as wearing an old-fashioned parka, while others claim it appears more like a shadow than a person. What makes these sightings particularly unnerving is the consistency with which they occur. Almost every winter, someone at the station reports seeing the dark figure, always in the same areas, near the old storage rooms or along the corridors leading to the science labs. In one account from the early 2000s, a maintenance worker named Brian described his encounter with the dark figure during his first winter over at the station. One night, while he was checking the heating systems in one of the station's older modules, he noticed a dark shape at the end of a long corridor. Initially assuming it was a fellow worker, he called out, but there was no response. As he approached, the figure seemed to dissolve into the shadows. Brian later reported feeling an intense chill and a sense of dread, unlike anything he had experienced before. Others at the station dismissed his story as a trick of the low lighting and the psychological effects of isolation, but Brian remained convinced he had seen something real, something not of this world. Another source of paranormal stories at the South Pole Station comes from the greenhouse, a small indoor garden space where crew members grow fresh vegetables and herbs during the winter months. While this space is usually a place of refuge and calm, it has also been the site of several eerie incidents. In the late 1990s, a researcher named Susan was tending to the plants late at night when she heard what she described as soft, muffled footsteps coming from behind her. Turning around, she found no one there. Over the following weeks, she continued to hear the footsteps at odd hours, always when she was alone in the greenhouse. Susan later learned that other crew members had reported similar experiences, leading to rumors that the greenhouse was haunted by a former staff member who had died at the station years earlier. Perhaps the most infamous haunting associated with the South Pole Station revolves around the mysterious death of Rodney Marks, an Australian astrophysicist who died under strange circumstances in 2000. Marks was stationed at the Amundsen Scott South Pole Station as part of a winter overcrew when he suddenly fell ill. Over the course of 36 hours, his condition rapidly deteriorated, and he died before he could be evacuated. due to the remote location and harsh winter conditions, his body was not returned to New Zealand for a proper autopsy until several months later. The autopsy revealed that he had died from methanol poisoning, but the source of the methanol and the circumstances surrounding his death remain unexplained to this day. Following Marx's death, many at the station began reporting strange occurrences, including unexplained noises, objects moving on their own, and the sensation of being watched. Some believe that Marx's spirit may still linger at the station, seeking answers to the mystery of his death. Several winter-over crews have reported seeing a figure matching Marx's description wandering the station at night, sometimes heard muttering to himself or pacing restlessly in the hallways. While some attribute these sightings to the power of suggestion or the psychological stress of the winter months, others are not so sure. In addition to these specific stories, there are countless smaller incidents that have contributed to the station's reputation as a haunted place. Doors that were securely closed are found mysteriously open. Tools and equipment vanish only to reappear in places they should not be, and sudden intense cold spots are felt in otherwise warm rooms. These experiences are often accompanied by a pervasive sense of unease, as if something unseen is watching. For those who have experienced these phenomena, the explanations of isolation-induced hallucinations or infrasound effects seem insufficient. Psychologists who study the effects of extreme isolation suggest that the intense darkness, confinement, and sensory deprivation experienced during the Antarctic winter can lead to hallucinations, paranoia, and a heightened sense of fear. The brain, they argue, may attempt to fill the sensory void with imagined sounds, sights, or feelings, which could explain the many stories of hauntings at the South Pole Station. However, this explanation does not account for the shared experiences of different people over the years. People who often come from diverse backgrounds and have no prior belief in the paranormal. In recent years, as more scientific research is conducted at the South Pole, the stories of ghostly encounters continue. Modern technology, including surveillance cameras and monitoring equipment, has yet to capture any definitive proof of paranormal activity, but the absence of evidence has not diminished the belief among some station personnel that something otherworldly is at play. The legacy of strange and unexplained events at the Amundsen Scott South Pole Station endures, and each winter a new crew arrives, bringing with them fresh curiosity, and perhaps a hint of fear about what they might encounter in the darkness beneath the ice. For now, the South Pole Station remains a place where science and superstition intersect, where the boundaries of the known and the unknown are tested daily. As research continues, and new generations of explorers venture into Antarctica's icy heart, the ghosts of the South Pole may continue to reveal themselves, one chilling encounter at a time. Chapter 4: Ghost Ships and Lost Expeditions, Phantom Vessels in the Antarctic Waters. The frigid waters surrounding Antarctica are among the most treacherous and mysterious on Earth. The Southern Ocean, with its towering waves, fierce winds, and unpredictable icebergs, has claimed countless ships and lives since the first explorers dared to venture south. Amidst these perilous conditions, stories have emerged of ghost ships, phantom vessels that drift silently across the icy seas, devoid of any living crew, but filled with an eerie presence that haunts those who witness them. These tales are not just the stuff of sailors' yarns. They are based on documented encounters and reported sightings that have contributed to the enduring mystique of Antarctica's waters. One of the most famous ghost ship stories associated with Antarctica is that of the SS Beichimo, an enigmatic ghost ship that became a legend of the polar seas. Built in 1914, the SS Beichimo was a steel-hulled cargo steamer operated by the Hudson's Bay Company. She sailed the Arctic routes, transporting furs and supplies to remote communities. In 1931, while navigating through the icy waters off the coast of Alaska, the Beichimo became trapped in pack ice. After repeated attempts to free the vessel failed, her crew abandoned her temporarily, believing they could return once the ice thawed. However, a violent storm scattered the ice, and the ship disappeared. Despite initial fears that the Beichimo had sunk, she was soon spotted drifting unmanned along the frigid coastlines. Over the next several decades, the SS Beichimo became a true ghost ship. seen countless times floating aimlessly through the Arctic and sub-Antarctic waters, from the Bering Sea down towards the Southern Ocean. Many attempts were made to board her, but the ship was always elusive, vanishing into the mist or becoming inaccessible due to shifting ice floes. Some who managed to climb aboard found the ship eerily intact, with personal items left behind by her crew, as if they had simply vanished into thin air. The last recorded sighting of the Beichimo was in 1969, almost 40 years after she was abandoned. To this day, her ultimate fate remains a mystery. The story of the Beichimo has fueled speculation and fear among sailors, suggesting that the icy waters of the southern hemisphere are haunted by vessels doomed to wander forever, their crews lost to the cold abyss. In addition to ghost ships like the Beichimo, the history of Antarctic exploration is riddled with tales of lost expeditions and the spectral vessels they left behind. Perhaps the most famous of these is the Endurance, led by Sir Ernest Shackleton during his Imperial Trans-Antarctic expedition of 1914-1917. After becoming trapped in the pack ice of the Weddell Sea, the Endurance was slowly crushed and sank in November 1915. Shackleton and his crew made an epic journey to safety, but the ghost of the Endurance is said to linger in the icy depths. Over the years, there have been several reports from ships traversing the Weddell Sea of seeing the outline of a three-masted ship partially submerged beneath the ice, eerily resembling the Endurance. Though such sightings are often attributed to optical illusions created by the shifting ice and light, they serve as haunting reminders of the ship's tragic end. Another chilling story comes from the Ross Sea, where the tragic fate of the Ross Sea party of Shackleton's expedition left a lasting imprint on the area. This party was stranded on the opposite side of the continent after their ship, the Aurora, broke free from its moorings and drifted away, leaving them without proper supplies. The men faced unimaginable hardships, and 3 members died in the harsh conditions. Decades later, in the 1950s, a New Zealand Navy crew navigating the Ross Sea reported seeing a ship on the horizon during a particularly foggy day. As they approached, the ship seemed to fade away into the mist. Some of the sailors later described feeling a sudden, inexplicable chill and a sense of overwhelming sorrow. The sighting was unofficially linked to the memory of the Aurora and the lost souls of the Ross Sea party, suggesting that the tragedy of their desperate struggle had left a ghostly mark on those waters. The Lady Elizabeth, an iron-hulled sailing ship built in 1879, is another vessel that has garnered a reputation for spectral sightings in the Southern Ocean. The Lady Elizabeth was damaged by a storm in 1913, and subsequently anchored in Whalers Bay on Deception Island for repairs. She was later moved to a more sheltered location but eventually sank, becoming a shipwreck that is partially visible to this day. Locals and visitors to Deception Island have reported seeing a ghostly version of the Lady Elizabeth sailing off the coast during particularly foggy weather. Witnesses describe the ship as appearing whole and undamaged, with its sails billowing despite the lack of wind, only to vanish without a trace when approached. Such reports have fueled rumors that the spirits of her crew, who once sailed her, continue to navigate the treacherous waters. One of the most unsettling accounts of a ghost ship in Antarctic waters involves the Japanese fishing vessel, MV Kyotoku Maru No. 1. In 2011, after the devastating tsunami in Japan, the Kyotoku Maru No. 1 was swept out to sea and became a ghost ship, drifting across the Pacific Ocean. In early 2012, this derelict vessel was spotted drifting perilously close to the frigid waters near Antarctica. The ship had become a symbol of the power of nature and the fragility of human endeavors, floating lifeless and empty across thousands of miles. Although not traditionally a ghost ship in the supernatural sense, the image of the Kyotoku Maru No. 1 drifting into the icy expanse of the Southern Ocean stirred primal fears among those who saw it, a stark reminder of the uncontrollable forces at play in these waters and the potential for vessels to become lost and forsaken. While some might dismiss these stories as fanciful tales born of fear and isolation, the persistence of these ghost ship legends points to something deeper. The Southern Ocean, with its ever-shifting icebergs and uncharted waters, serves as a canvas for the imagination. The isolation, the darkness of the long polar nights, and the inherent danger of sailing in these parts all contribute to a heightened sense of vulnerability and unease. It is in this psychological landscape that ghost ships become more than just stories. They become symbols of the unknown, of the mysteries that lie beneath the surface of the ice and in the depths of the human mind. The sea holds secrets, and in the vast uncharted waters of Antarctica, these secrets seem to take on a life of their own. Whether one believes in ghost ships or not, the stories serve as chilling reminders of the human struggle against nature's most unforgiving frontiers. Antarctica's ghost ships, from the SS Bachimo to the spectral sightings of the Endurance and beyond, remind us that some mysteries are destined to remain unsolved, drifting like shadows across the icy seas, forever out of reach but always just on the edge of our perception. Chapter 5: The Haunted Huts of Ross Island, Spirits of the Frozen Past. Ross Island, a remote and windswept landmass on the edge of the Ross Sea, is home to some of the most significant relics of Antarctic exploration. The island's rugged terrain is dotted with historic huts, left behind by legendary explorers such as Robert Falcon Scott and Ernest Shackleton. These preserved wooden structures, built to withstand the harsh Antarctic environment, have become time capsules, capturing the spirit of early 20th century exploration. Yet, these huts are not only monuments to human endurance, they are also believed to be haunted by the ghosts of their former occupants. Visitors, researchers and conservationists have reported a range of eerie experiences inside these huts, experiences that suggest the spirits of the past still linger, haunting the frozen halls of these historic buildings. Among the most famous of these structures is Scott's Hut at Cape Evans, constructed during Robert Falcon Scott's ill-fated Terra Nova expedition, 1910-1913. This hut, remarkably preserved by the cold and dry Antarctic climate, still contains many of the original artifacts used by Scott and his men as they prepared for their journey to the South Pole, a journey from which Scott and several of his team would never return. The hut's interior remains almost exactly as it was left over a century ago, with canned goods, tools, clothing, and even scientific instruments still arranged as they were when the men last used them. This frozen-in-time quality gives Scott's hut a profoundly eerie atmosphere, as if the spirits of Scott and his crew might return at any moment to continue their work. Visitors to Scott's hut often speak of an overwhelming sense of being watched. Some have reported hearing soft footsteps or the faint rustle of clothing, even when they are alone. One of the most unnerving experiences recounted by a researcher involved the sound of someone breathing deeply, as if from exhaustion when there was no one else around. This phenomenon has been reported by multiple people over the years, all describing it as a heavy, labored breathing that seems to come from just over their shoulder. The experiences are so vivid that they have left many convinced that Scott's spirit, or perhaps that of one of his lost companions, still haunts the hut where they spent some of their final days. Not far from Scott's hut is Shackleton's hut at Cape Royds, built during Ernest Shackleton's Nimrod expedition 1907 to 1909. Like Scott's hut, Shackleton's hut is incredibly well preserved, complete with the explorers' personal effects, cooking utensils and even some of their supplies still intact. The hut's small, cramped quarters served as a base for Shackleton and his men during their daring attempt to reach the South Pole. While Shackleton turned back before reaching the pole, his expedition was still marked by harrowing experiences and close brushes with death. Those who have visited Shackleton's hut have reported a range of strange occurrences, from sudden temperature drops to the inexplicable movement of objects. One well-known story involves a photographer who was part of a preservation team in the early 2000s. While alone in the hut, he felt a sudden intense chill, despite wearing thick winter gear. He described the sensation as if walking into a freezer, though there was no change in the temperature outside. Moments later, he noticed that a tin cup, which had been on a shelf moments before, was now lying on the floor several feet away. Shaken, he quickly left the hut and refused to enter it alone again. Such experiences have led to speculation that the spirits of Shackleton and his men continue to inhabit the place, perhaps bound there by the extreme emotions they experienced during their ordeal. Another haunted location on Ross Island is Discovery Hut, built by Scott during the Discovery Expedition 1901-1904. Unlike Scott's later hut at Cape Evans, Discovery Hut was rarely used as a living space due to its poor insulation and the extreme cold that penetrated its walls. Instead, it served as a storage and meeting place. Despite its limited use, Discovery Hut has its share of ghostly tales. Visitors have reported hearing faint, indistinct voices coming from the hut's dark corners, as if engaged in quiet conversation. Others have described a feeling of sudden dread or unease, as though an unseen presence were standing nearby, watching them. One of the most chilling stories comes from a scientist who, while working alone near the hut in the late 1980s, claimed to see a figure in old-fashioned clothing standing in the doorway. When he approached, the figure disappeared, leaving him with an unshakable sense of having seen something or someone from another time. Some of the strange occurrences reported in these huts may be attributed to natural causes. The Antarctic environment is one of extremes, where sudden gusts of wind shifting ice and the sounds of the frozen landscape can play tricks on the senses. The phenomenon of whiteout conditions, when the landscape becomes a uniform field of white, can disorient visitors, making them prone to seeing things that are not there. Additionally, the hut's age and their creaking wooden structures might contribute to unexplained noises that are mistaken for ghostly sounds. However, these natural explanations do not fully account for the intensity and frequency of the experiences reported by those who have spent time in these historic huts. Many of the visitors who have encountered these strange phenomena are seasoned researchers and scientists, rational, level-headed individuals not prone to flights of fancy. The consistency of their stories, spanning decades, suggests that there might be more to the haunted reputation of Ross Island's huts than mere imagination or environmental effects. Some paranormal enthusiasts believe that the intense emotional energy associated with the early explorers' struggles against the unforgiving Antarctic elements has somehow been imprinted on these huts, creating what is known in ghost hunting circles as a residual haunting. In this theory, the huts are not so much haunted by conscious spirits as they are by the echo of past events replaying themselves, like a recording embedded in the very fabric of the structures. Others believe that the spirits of Scott, Shackleton, and their men are indeed still present, perhaps lingering due to unfinished business or a deep connection to the places where they fought for survival. Whatever the explanation, the haunted huts of Ross Island remain a powerful symbol of the human spirit's resilience and the mysteries that still linger in the cold, dark corners of the Antarctic continent. For those who visit these huts today, there is a sense of stepping back in time, of crossing a threshold where the past feels remarkably close. Whether it is the product of the mind, the environment, or something truly supernatural, the eerie atmosphere inside these huts leaves an indelible impression. They stand as silent witnesses to the hardships, courage, and perhaps the lingering spirits of the explorers who once called them home, a haunting reminder that Antarctica, in all its icy desolation, is a place where history and the supernatural seem to intertwine. Chapter 6: The Mysterious Disappearances, Vanished Without a Trace. The unforgiving expanse of Antarctica is as vast as it is mysterious. Over the years, numerous people have ventured into the icy continent, driven by scientific curiosity, adventure, or the desire to push the limits of human endurance. However, not all who set foot on the Antarctic ice return. Antarctica has a chilling history of disappearances, individuals who vanished without a trace, leaving behind only unanswered questions and ghostly rumors. These stories, set against a backdrop of extreme isolation and harsh conditions, evoke a deep-seated fear of the unknown, suggesting that some mysteries of this frozen land may never be solved. One of the earliest and most haunting tales of disappearance in Antarctica is that of 3 Soviet scientists who vanished from a remote Antarctic station in 1959. Stationed at a small outpost on the continent, these scientists were part of a Soviet expedition focused on glaciology and meteorology. One night, during a severe storm, all 3 men reportedly left the safety of their base and walked out into the snow, never to be seen again. Despite extensive searches, no trace of their bodies or equipment was ever found. The circumstances surrounding their disappearance remain a mystery. Some speculate that they might have fallen victim to a crevasse or been disoriented by the blinding snow. Others, however, suggest something more sinister or supernatural, pointing to strange radio transmissions reported by other nearby stations before the men disappeared, transmissions that some believe could have been distress signals or a call for help. The story of the missing Soviet scientists is not an isolated incident. Antarctica has a long list of unexplained disappearances, from individual researchers to entire groups. One such story involves a group of American researchers who vanished in 1965 while conducting geological surveys in the Ellsworth Mountains. The team, consisting of 4 geologists and a support crew, had been radioing their daily updates back to base camp without issue. However, after several days of radio silence, a search party was dispatched to locate them. When the rescue team arrived at the campsite, they found it abandoned, with all equipment and personal belongings left untouched, as if the group had simply walked away. There were no signs of a struggle, no footprints leading away, and no clues as to where they had gone. The disappearance of the Ellsworth group remains one of Antarctica's most perplexing mysteries, with theories ranging from hidden crevasses swallowing them whole, to strange weather phenomena disorienting them and leading them astray. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of these disappearances is the lack of logical explanations. Antarctica's extreme environment can certainly be a factor. Whiteout conditions, sub-zero temperatures, and treacherous ice fields are more than enough to cause accidents. However, the sheer number of stories involving experienced explorers and scientists, many of whom were well prepared and familiar with the terrain, suggests that something more than natural hazards could be at play. This has led some to propose more outlandish theories involving UFOs, secret military experiments, or even portals to other dimensions. While these ideas are often dismissed as conspiracy theories, they highlight the sense of fear and fascination that Antarctica's unsolved mysteries evoke. A more recent case that has fueled speculation is the 2000 disappearance of a South African mountaineer, Gareth Bellamy, who was part of a team attempting to climb Mount Vinson, Antarctica's highest peak. Bellamy was an experienced climber, and his team was well equipped for the journey. During a descent, he reportedly decided to take a different route back to the base camp, believing it would be faster. That was the last time his companions saw him. When he failed to return, a search and rescue operation was launched, covering a vast area of the mountain. Despite favorable weather conditions, no trace of Bellamy was ever found. His disappearance has puzzled experts and has become a subject of eerie speculation among Antarctic adventurers. Some say he fell into a hidden crevasse or was buried by a sudden snowslide. However, the fact that no gear, clothing, or even signs of distress were ever discovered has led to more chilling theories. Some whisper about encounters with shadow people or the presence of an unseen force that took him. These stories of vanished explorers contribute to a growing sense that Antarctica is a place where the rules of reality can bend, where the boundaries between the natural and supernatural blur. There are also stories of phantom radio signals that add to the eerie atmosphere of the place. Multiple Antarctic research stations have reported receiving strange, indecipherable radio signals from uncharted areas of the continent. These signals often come in the form of faint, garbled transmissions that sound like a combination of human voices and static, making them almost impossible to interpret. While some suggest these signals could be the result of atmospheric interference or equipment malfunction, others believe they could be distress calls from lost or trapped expeditions, ghostly echoes of those who have vanished into the snow and ice. Among these ghostly tales, one of the most debated incidents involves the Vostok Station, a Russian research facility located near Lake Vostok, one of the largest subglacial lakes in Antarctica. In 2012, a team drilling down to the lake reported strange noises and unexpected anomalies in their data. Shortly afterward, several crew members went missing under mysterious circumstances, only to reappear days later with no memory of what had happened. They were found wandering in a confused state several miles from the station. Rumors quickly spread that they had encountered something unnatural beneath the ice. Though officially dismissed as disorientation caused by the harsh conditions and isolation, this event remains a topic of speculation among those familiar with Antarctica's many mysteries. The Antarctic environment itself may play a crucial role in the mysterious disappearances. The phenomenon known as polar madness or Arctic hysteria has been documented among individuals subjected to extreme isolation and monotonous surroundings for prolonged periods. This condition can lead to hallucinations, irrational behavior, and even suicidal tendencies. Some of the disappearances may indeed be the result of such psychological stress. However, many cases involve individuals who were not alone and showed no signs of mental deterioration prior to their disappearance, complicating the narrative and keeping the door open for more eerie explanations. Another theory that has gained some traction involves infrasound, low-frequency sound waves that are below the range of human hearing. Infrasound is known to cause feelings of unease, anxiety, and even hallucinations in some people. It is theorized that the movement of ice, combined with the howling winds of Antarctica, could produce infrasound that disorients and drives individuals to irrational behavior. While this may explain some cases, it does not account for the utter lack of evidence left behind by the vanished individuals or groups, leaving a gap that more conventional explanations cannot easily fill. Whether the result of natural hazards, psychological effects, or something more inexplicable, the mysterious disappearances in Antarctica remind us of the continent's relentless and unforgiving nature. For every mystery that the frozen land reveals, there seem to be a dozen more waiting in the shadows. As new explorers and researchers continue to push into the uncharted corners of this icy wilderness, they do so with the knowledge that Antarctica does not easily give up its secrets, and that sometimes those who seek answers here may find more than they bargained for, or may never return at all. Chapter 7: Modern Encounters and Theories, Science versus the Supernatural. In the modern age of satellite technology, advanced science and instant communication, one might assume that the mysteries of Antarctica have been thoroughly explored and explained. However, the stories of strange occurrences and eerie encounters in this vast, icy wilderness persist, with new reports emerging even in recent years. These modern accounts, shared by scientists, military personnel, and tourists alike, continue to blur the line between the scientific and the supernatural, challenging our understanding of what might be lurking in the most remote place on Earth. This chapter delves into some of these recent encounters and examines the theories, both scientific and speculative, that attempt to explain them. Antarctica, with its extreme environment and unique conditions, remains one of the least understood places on the planet. It is a continent where the laws of nature often appear to stretch to their limits, creating an atmosphere where the uncanny can seem almost routine. In recent years, as more people have ventured to the southernmost reaches of the world, new stories have surfaced that rival those of the early explorers in their strangeness and their capacity to inspire fear. One recurring theme among these modern encounters is the sensation of being watched, an unsettling feeling that has been reported by many who have spent extended periods on the ice. At the Amundsen-Scott South Pole Station, where some of the world's most advanced astronomical and climate research takes place, there are numerous accounts of researchers experiencing what they describe as a presence during the long dark winter months. The sun sets for 6 months at the South Pole, plunging the station into a deep unbroken darkness. It is during this time that many claim to feel an invisible entity watching them, as they work in the labs or walk through the empty corridors. Some scientists have reported hearing faint footsteps behind them, only to turn around and find no one there. Others have mentioned a sudden, inexplicable drop in temperature, accompanied by a sense of dread. While these experiences are often dismissed as psychological effects of prolonged isolation and darkness, the consistency and frequency of such reports raise questions about whether something more might be happening. Another source of chilling modern encounters comes from tourists and adventurers who visit the Antarctic Peninsula, the most accessible part of the continent. One notable account involves a group of tourists who visited Deception Island, a volcanic caldera known for its eerie landscape and abandoned whaling stations. During a guided tour of the island's remains, a woman in the group felt a cold hand grasp her arm. She turned to see who had touched her, only to find no one nearby. The guide, familiar with the island's haunted reputation, recounted similar experiences from other visitors, stories of ghostly apparitions seen among the ruins, disembodied whispers and sudden intense chills. For many who come to Antarctica seeking adventure, these unexpected brushes with the unexplainable provide an experience that is as memorable as the landscape itself. There are also reports from scientific outposts scattered across the continent, where personnel have encountered phenomena that defy conventional explanation. At Vostok Station, a remote Russian research base located near Lake Vostok, a massive subglacial lake buried beneath over 2 miles of ice, there have been numerous strange events. In 2012, when drilling operations were underway to reach the lake, researchers reported odd mechanical malfunctions, inexplicable power outages, and strange noises emanating from the ice below. Some crew members spoke of seeing shadowy figures moving just at the edge of their vision. These incidents have fueled rumors that something unknown might be lurking beneath the ice, deep within Lake Vostok, a place untouched for millions of years. While these stories are often attributed to psychological stress or the extreme cold affecting equipment, they persist as unsettling reminders that Antarctica is still a land of mysteries. Theories attempting to explain these encounters often fall into 2 broad categories: scientific explanations and paranormal or supernatural hypotheses. On the scientific side, many experts suggest that the experiences described by those in Antarctica are a result of the continent's extreme environmental conditions. The prolonged isolation, endless darkness during winter, and the monotonous landscape can lead to a phenomenon known as polar psychosis or winter over syndrome, which is characterized by depression, anxiety, hallucinations, and even paranoia. Under these circumstances, the human brain, deprived of stimulation and exposed to extreme stress, can manifest phenomena that seem very real to the experiencer. Additionally, there is the phenomenon of infrasound, low-frequency sound waves that are below the threshold of human hearing but can cause feelings of discomfort, dread, and even hallucinations. Infrasound can be generated by natural events such as shifting ice, strong winds, or volcanic activity, all common in Antarctica. Some researchers propose that these sounds could account for the sense of being watched, or the ghostly sounds heard in the dead of Antarctic winter. Despite these rational explanations, the persistence and consistency of these reports, especially from people with no prior belief in the paranormal, leave room for alternative theories. Some speculate that Antarctica, with its unique geology and position on the planet, could be a hotspot for unusual energy fields or electromagnetic phenomena that might affect human perception. Others propose the possibility of undiscovered natural phenomena or creatures that could be responsible for the strange occurrences, pointing to the continent's largely unexplored regions, and the fact that humans have only scratched the surface of understanding its mysteries. For those inclined toward more paranormal interpretations, the theories range from the spirits of lost explorers haunting the ice, to shadow people or entities from other dimensions. A particularly interesting theory involves the idea that the isolation and extreme conditions of Antarctica could act as a sort of veil, thinning the boundaries between our world and another, allowing for brief glimpses or encounters with the unknown. This idea, while speculative, resonates with many who have experienced unexplainable phenomena on the continent. Another layer of intrigue is added by the numerous conspiracy theories surrounding Antarctica. Some believe that there are hidden bases, ancient civilizations buried under the ice, or secret portals that lead to other worlds. These theories, while often lacking concrete evidence, tap into the broader sense of mystery that surrounds Antarctica, a place where so much remains hidden both literally and figuratively. The reality of Antarctica's inaccessibility and extreme conditions means that many parts of the continent are still largely unexplored, leaving room for speculation and the imagination to run wild. As science advances, we may yet uncover new explanations for the strange phenomena reported in Antarctica. However, the interplay between science and the supernatural in this frozen wilderness serves as a reminder that not all mysteries can be neatly categorized or solved. For those who venture into the icy heart of Antarctica, the unexplainable remains a part of the journey, a testament to the enduring power of the unknown. Whether these stories are the product of human psychology, natural phenomena, or something truly beyond our understanding, they continue to captivate and inspire, ensuring that Antarctica will remain a land of mystery and wonder for generations to come.